This is the series that I've got going. This is called Learn Korean Through Music. Okay, and here's the idea is something I got from a magazine that was around like back in the 1990s called Mangaji, which was a publication that was about learning Japanese through manga, through Japanese comics and stuff. And what they would do, which was extremely helpful for me learning Japanese at the time, was they would give you the original text, and dialogue and stuff, and then under it, they give you a literal word for word gloss of what's going on. And then they give you the idiomatic English translation. And so, and that is really important to actually kind of see how those two things relate to each other. Because both with Korean and with Japanese, you have to get used to a totally new way of formulating your ideas and thoughts and stuff like that in order for what you say in English to have the same effect as it would, in Japanese as it would in English. It's really complicated stuff, and you have to kind of be able to look under the bonnet a bit and see exactly how it's working. So, what we're doing here is I'm taking these songs and let me, okay, hold on a second. It'll take just a second to get some subtitles. I'll show you what we are. Okay, so we have the Korean original lyrics. 종이홀 다가고서 모리라네. And then in the middle, we have this literal gloss that just goes word for word without, adjusting word order or trying to make it sound, like make it make sense in English to show kind of how the parts go together. And at the bottom then, an idiomatic English translation. In this case, translations all by me. So we go through this and word for word these various Korean songs. I picked some favorites of mine that I think are probably not familiar to most learners. Sort of, and then afterwards we have a vocab section that looks like this. And so that's how this is going to work. And it's a series. I've got the first video almost finished. I just have to get some of the translations checked out. I have a friend who's going to just look over a few things that I'm not entirely certain I've got right before I actually upload it. And the way it's going to work is there will be one a week, and there will be sort of early previews, early viewing for people who are patrons on my Patreon. And then like 5 days later, I think roughly, it'll become generally available. And the music will probably be music that most people haven't actually heard, because I'm not doing K-pop. Everybody, people have already done that. I'm actually doing like some of the more interesting North Korean songs that I've come up with. Although this actually is not specifically a North Korean song, it's worth noting. This was written before there was a North Korea in 1928, but the performance It's performed a lot in the North. Not necessarily. See, the thing is, if you. That's the thing. The language, just the way, if you were to speak English the exact same way as Korean, it would make no sense. The same thing is true the other way. It would just sound extremely. It would just sound extremely weird and disconcerting after a certain point. A lot of things. One of the things you have to really kind of get used to. I mean, you might be able to kind of make yourself understood, but it's not going to sound, it's going to sound a little bit odd if you're just kind of going word for word, because just the way people form expressions is just different. And so English is going to sound all. You try to go word for word between Korean and English, it's going to be awkward in both directions. So one of the things you just have to kind of get used to when learning is that you're going to have to learn to sort of. First of all, it's best not to be constantly trying to translate in your head, but it's important to know exactly how people actually express these ideas, these sentiments, these thoughts, and everything in Korean. So and understand how the differences, where the differences are, in order to be able to kind of adapt your own way of expressing yourself, so that you can speak a much more natural, much more understandable Korean.